Trump says journalists should be allowed into Gaza. Russia-Ukraine exchanged 84 prisoners of war in the latest series of swap. Good afternoon and Salam Malaysia Madani. I'm Priya and you're watching World Today. The United Arab Emirates carried out its 70th airdrop of humanitarian aid over the Gaza Strip recently as part of the Birds of Goodness campaign under the Gallant Night 3 initiative. The operation was conducted in cooperation with Jordan and with the participation of France, Germany, Belgium and Italy. According to Emirates news agency, the aid was being loaded onto military transport aircraft, followed by an airdrop over various areas of Gaza, where displaced civilians rushed to collect the supplies.
الأمم المتحدة على أن قدمت لنا هذه المساعدات بحمد الله تعالى. الحمد لله الكل استفاد من هذه المساعدات ونتمنى إن شاء الله المزيد.
The shipment included essential food supplies prepared with support from Emirati charitable organizations and institutions to meet the needs of the population in the Gaza Strip. The agency added that this airdrop brings the total amount of aid delivered by air under the operation to more than 3,940 tons, including food and essential supplies. US President Donald Trump said on Thursday that he would like to see journalists gain access to Gaza to see humanitarian efforts. Israel has not allowed foreign reporters to enter Gaza since the start of its war in October 2023, unless they are under Israeli military escort.
And I'd like to see that happen, too. I would like to see it happen. I would be very fine with journalists going in. And it's a very dangerous position to be in, as you know, if you're a journalist. But I would like to see it.
This comes days after Al Jazeera journalists Anas Al-Sharif, Mohammad Koreka, Ibrahim Zahir, Mohammad Aliwa and Mohammad Nofal were killed in a targeted airstrike outside the Gaza City Hospital complex. Israel has asserted that Al-Sharif and other Al Jazeera journalists have strong ties to Hamas. However, both Al-Sharif and Al Jazeera had denied this claim. All 800 National Guard troops who were ordered to the U.S. capital, Washington, to aid law enforcement personnel by President Donald Trump have now been mobilized. Pentagon Press Secretary Kingsley Wilson said the troops will remain until law and order has been restored in the district, as determined by the president. The U.S. Army later said the National Guard's initial mission is to provide a visible presence in key public areas, serving as a visible crime deterrent. It added the troops will be equipped with protective gear, saying that weapons would be available if needed, but would remain in the armory. Trump ordered the deployment, which follows a similar move during protests in Los Angeles in June, as part of what he billed as a crackdown on crime in Washington. The overwhelmingly Democratic U.S. Capitol faces allegations from Republican politicians that it is overrun by crime, plagued by homelessness, and financially mismanaged. However, data from Washington police shows significant drops in violent crime between 2023 and 2024, although that was coming off the back of a post-pandemic surge. The deployment of troops in Washington comes after Trump dispatched the National Guard and Marines to quell unrest in Los Angeles, California, that was spurred by immigration enforcement raids. It was the first time since 1965 that a U.S. president deployed the National Guard against the wishes of a state governor. Russia and Ukraine exchanged 84 prisoners each on Thursday, both sides said, the latest in a series of swaps that has seen hundreds of POWs released so far this year. Now, this latest one came on the eve of a high-level summit between Russian President Vladimir Putin and U.S. counterpart Donald Trump in Alaska on Friday. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said on social media that among the exchanged prisoners were both military personnel and civilians, some of whom had been held by the Russians since 2014, 2016 and 2017. He said defenders of Mariupol were also part of the swap, referring to a Ukrainian port city that fell to Russian forces in 2022 following a nearly 3-month siege. The Russian Defense Ministry said on Telegram that the United Arab Emirates had mediated the exchange and that the released Russian personnel were receiving psychological and medical assistance. Large-scale prisoner exchanges were the only tangible result of 3 rounds of peace talks between Russian and Ukrainian delegations in Istanbul between May and July. In their latest round of talks last month, Russia and Ukraine agreed to exchange 1,200 prisoners of war each. A Russian negotiator said that Moscow had also offered to hand Kiev the bodies of 3,000 killed soldiers. Hundreds of anti-corruption protesters were locked in a tense standoff with the riot police in Belgrade on Thursday as public anger against President Aleksandar Vučić and his government continued to mount. Now, the demonstrators hurled objects at officers while igniting fireworks and smoke flares. Authorities retaliated by unleashing tear gas, forcing the crowds to retreat amid concerns that protesters may target the Parliament building. It comes after protests continued for a 3rd day, with clashes erupting between demonstrators and pro-Vučić groups. This follows over 9 months of sustained opposition to the Serbian leader. Interior Minister Ivica Dačić claimed large-scale protests occurred in more than 90 locations nationwide, drawing over 3,000 demonstrators to the streets. He also confirmed that 47 individuals were arrested and more than 100 people injured during Wednesday's unrest, including 27 police officers. The student-led protests in Serbia began in November of last year, following the collapse of a canopy at a train station in the northern city of Novi Sad. UK Finance Minister Rachel Reeves highlighted on Thursday how British economic growth in the first quarter of the year was the fastest in the group of 7 large advanced economies. Thursday's data showed Britain joined second with France in the second quarter.
Yes. Gallery, library, museum, so we're pleased to be back in on.
Today's numbers show that the economy beat expectations in the second quarter of this year. We are the fastest growing economy in the G7 for the first half of this year, with a GDP growth of 0.3% this quarter, and that's after GDP growth of 0.7% the quarter before that.
She added the output in the second quarter overall was up 1.2% from the same period last year, compared to a median forecast from economists for 1% growth. On a per-head basis, GDP was 0.7% higher than a year earlier. The biggest contribution came from services, while the construction industry also grew. In the services sector, computer programming, including consultancy, software installation, and disaster recovery helped push up growth. Vehicle rentals and health services such as doctors' surgeries, hospitals and nursing homes also boosted the economy. Meanwhile, the opposition Conservative Party said further tax rises would lower living standards. Now, India and China are discussing resuming border trade 5 years after it was halted as U.S. tariffs disrupt the global trade order. Pass trade between the neighbours across the icy and high-altitude Himalayan border passes was usually small in volume, but any resumption is significant for its symbolism. The two major economic powers have long competed for strategic influence across South Asia. However, the two countries, caught in global trade and geopolitical turbulence triggered by U.S. President Donald Trump's tariff regime, have moved to mend ties. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi is expected for talks in New Delhi on Monday, after his counterpart Subramaniam Jaishankar visited Beijing in July. That, as well as agreements to resume direct flights and issue tourist visas, has been seen as an effort to rebuild a relationship damaged after a deadly 2020 border clash between troops. It said the two sides have reached a consensus on cross-border exchanges and cooperation, including resumption of border trade. New Delhi's junior foreign minister Kirti Vardhan Singh told Parliament last week that India has engaged with the Chinese side to facilitate the resumption of border trade. No restart date was given by either side. Coming up next, at least 56 killed in India flooding disaster. Stay tuned.
Cultivating urban farms for a sustainable future.
Recently, we are talking about addressing the mental health crisis within the healthcare system.
And then, of course, expectations from the public.
How these people are so into farming. Even
cities grow and populations rise. There's the question of how we access food.
Welcome back. More than 360 people fell ill in the Indonesian town of Sragen in central Java after consuming school lunches, an official said on Thursday. It is the largest food poisoning case to hit President Prabowo Subianto's flagship free meals program. The government said 365 people fell ill and a food sample was being tested in a lab. The government says it will pay for any medical treatment if needed.
Setelah mengkonsumsi itu ada beberapa anak yang sudah bercerita ada rasa-rasa mules. Kemudian yang paling banyak melaporkan itu setelah pulang sekolah dan habis maghrib itu sudah mulai anak-anak sudah sering ke belakang. Jadi sejak itu beberapa orang tua melaporkan ke wali kelas bahwa anaknya mengalami gangguan setelah mengkonsumsi MBG. Jadi itulah yang kejadian awal.
Jujur ya trauma, soalnya ya nggak salah apa-apa, ya lapar, kasih makanan ya gratis, ya dimakan malah diracuni.
The likely contaminated lunch was turmeric rice, omelette ribbons, fried tempeh, cucumber and lettuce salad, sliced apple and a box of milk, cooked in a central kitchen and distributed to several schools. The government's National Nutrition Agency, which oversees the program, has raised the standards of kitchen operations and delivery in the aftermath of previous food poisoning cases. More than 7,000 cases of a mosquito-borne virus have been reported in China's Guangdong province since July, triggering COVID-style containment measures. Hence, the government has set up special mosquito control teams to curb the outbreak. The virus is spread by mosquito bites and symptoms include a sudden fever and joint pain. On Thursday, the teams have begun spraying insecticide in the streets of Foshan. According to local media reports, chikungunya patients are required to remain in the hospital under mosquito netting and can be discharged only after testing negative or completing a week-long stay in the city. So far this year, about 240,000 cases of chikungunya fever and 90 related deaths have been reported in 16 countries in the Americas, Africa, Asia and Europe. Chikungunya fever can spread rapidly in densely populated cities where mosquitoes thrive, with newborns, the elderly and people with underlying conditions such as heart disease or diabetes at higher risk of severe illness. At least 56 people have died and dozens more remain missing after torrents of water and mud driven by intense rain crashed through a Himalayan village Thursday in Indian-administered Kashmir. It is the second major deadly flooding disaster in India this month. The incident occurred in Chasoti town of Krishtwar district, a stopover point on a popular pilgrimage route. It comes a little over a week after a heavy flood and mudslide engulfed an entire village in the Himalayan state of Uttarakhand. The flood washed away a community kitchen and security post set up in the village, a pit stop along the pilgrimage route to the Machal Mata temple. It was reported that 80 people were still missing and 300 people were rescued, 50 of whom are severely injured and were sent to nearby hospitals. The Machal Yatra is a popular pilgrimage to the high-altitude Himalayan shrine, and pilgrims trek to the temple from Chasoti, where the road for vehicles ends. According to the Indian Meteorological Department, a cloudburst is a sudden, intense downpour of over 100 millimeters of rain in just 1 hour that can trigger sudden floods, landslides, and devastation, especially in mountainous regions during the monsoon. The region's weather department has issued an alert for more heavy rain and floods, asking residents to remain vigilant. Meanwhile, heavy rain caused severe flooding in parts of northern India on Thursday, disrupting the lives of commuters and local residents. Gurugram and Noida were hit by heavy downpours, with many vehicles and pedestrians having to pass through flooded streets. In the capital, New Delhi, desperate locals were seen dragging motorcycles through floodwaters as they struggled to reach work. The monsoon season, which accounts for about 75% of India's annual rainfall, is vital as nearly half of the country's farmland doesn't have irrigation. However, excessive rain often causes floods and the waterlogging primarily due to poor drainage systems. Typhoon Podul hit China's Fujian province on Thursday, making landfall in Jiangpu County just after midnight, after pounding Taiwan's Taitung County a day before. According to the Fujian Provincial Meteorological Observatory, it was classified as a severe tropical storm at the time of the latest landfall, with maximum sustained winds of 30 meters per second near its center. In Xiamen, the rain and winds wreaking havoc, bringing down trees and other debris, damaging cars and pavements, with some districts in Xiamen recording more than 50 millimeters in 24 hours. The storm disrupted power supplies in the town, prompting the deployment of over 660 workers and 100 emergency vehicles. In Xixi city, more than 7,200 people were evacuated and coastal attractions closed ahead of the storm. Podul is forecast to weaken as it moves towards Guangdong, Guangxi, Hunan, and Guizhou. Powerful winds of up to 305 kilometers per hour from Typhoon Podul tore roofs of buildings, including a petrol station, and shattered shop windows across Taitung County in Taiwan. Over 5,500 residents were evacuated from there and other southern regions ahead of the typhoon's landfall.
市区啊，我们车行有2间的，有看到的就是招牌倒掉。 然后我们的一个全部都被拆掉了，其他，水的问题是没有了，水比较少，水管水塔有飞掉啊，那个，有的车子玻璃就是挡风玻璃有破掉这样子，至于其他的，也是陆续有蛮多灾情。
One person was reported missing in Taitung, with 33 injuries documented across Taiwan. Earlier, all domestic flights and numerous international flights were cancelled, while train services in southeastern Taiwan were suspended and ferry operations halted. More than 2,300 households across Taitung were left without electricity. The local government warned that mountainous areas were at a high risk of landslides, exacerbated by heavy rains in July that had already saturated the ground. Smoke mixed with the summer sun to turn the skies above Spain's northwestern Zamora province orange red on Thursday, as the country faced one of its worst summers for fires in 20 years. Spain's wildfires are being fanned by one of the longest heat waves since records began. The wildfires have razed about 148,000 hectares in the country this year, the second biggest area since 2006. According to the European Commission's European Forest Fire Information System, that makes up more than a quarter of the 512,000 hectares burnt in the EU so far this year. Interior Minister Fernando Grande Marlaska said Spain received 2 Canadair water-bombing planes from France on Thursday after it asked for help from European partners to tackle the fires. The hot weather caused it to spread rapidly, burning 4,000 hectares and leaving 5 people injured. The police stated 10 people have been arrested since 1st of June, who were investigating a further 38 for deliberately starting forest fires. Convicted arsonists in Spain could face up to 5 years in prison and hefty fines. Meanwhile, a wildfire burning through central Portugal lit up the night sky in hues of orange and red as flames swept across late Thursday. According to the European Forest Fire Information System, so far this year, about 52,000 hectares or 0.6% of Portugal's total area have burned, exceeding the 2006 to 2024 average for the same period by about 10,000 hectares. Scientists say the Mediterranean region's hotter, drier summers put it at risk of wildfires. Air Canada expects to cancel the majority of its estimated 700 daily flights on Friday, ahead of a planned Saturday strike by unionized flight attendants. Now, Canada's largest carrier said it would cancel several dozen flights by day's end and around 500 flights by the end of Friday, as its 10,000 flight attendants gear up to strike over stalled contract talks on higher wages and unpaid work. Chief Human Resources Officer at Air Canada, Ariel Melul-Welcher, said on Thursday the carrier was available to bargain at any time on the condition that the negotiation has substance.
Abrupt work stoppages at airlines create chaos for travelers. We have all seen pictures of people sleeping at airports, stranded far from home, and uncertain of their travel. This will also impact our cargo operations and have consequences on the supply chain.
The dispute hinges on the way airlines compensate flight attendants. Most have traditionally paid them only when planes are in motion. However, in the latest contract negotiations, flight attendants in North America have sought compensation for hours worked, including for tasks such as boarding passengers and waiting around the airport before and between flights. Air Canada operates over 250 aircraft on flights to more than 65 countries. Coming up in sports, a Sinner storms into Cincinnati semis. Stay with us.
Peralatan elektrik 5 bintang memberikan perkhidmatan 5 bintang.
Liverpool manager Arne Slot continued to reinforce his squad on the eve of their Premier League season opener, confirming on Thursday that the club had agreed to a deal to sign 18-year-old defender Giovanni Leone from Parma. While no financial details were disclosed, British media reported the fee for the Serie A player at €26 million. Slot's men kick off the defence of their title when they host Bournemouth on Friday in what is sure to be an emotional night at Anfield, following the death of Portugal forward Diogo Jota and his brother in a car crash in July. Leone is expected to have a medical later on Thursday and will immediately join the first team, with the club ruling out any possibility of a loan move. The teenager will join Virgil van Dijk, Ibrahima Konate and Joe Gomez, who is a doubt for Friday, having recently returned from an Achilles injury, among Slot's centre-back options, and shore up a backline that showed frailties during pre-season. Liverpool have a tough start to the campaign, with games away to Newcastle United and at home to last season's runners-up Arsenal among their first 3 fixtures. Meanwhile, Franco Masantuono says he is living his dream after signing his contract with Real Madrid and being presented to the media on his 18th birthday. The Argentine midfielder joins the La Liga club from River Plate on a 6-year contract.
Mi primer sueño como futbolista fue jugar en River, que lo pude cumplir. La verdad que nací ahí en River. En mi opinión, el equipo más grande de América. Muchos jugadores han pasado de River, como vos dijiste, al Real Madrid. Yo no tuve el privilegio de poder ver a Di Stéfano, pero sí me contaron mis abuelos y la verdad que lo que significó para el mundo del fútbol y para el Real Madrid es muy grande y para mí es una alegría enorme poder pasar de River al club más grande del mundo, que es el Real Madrid.
Having come through River Plate's youth system, Masantuono was part of the first team in the 2024-2025 season, becoming the youngest scorer in River's history in February last year. He also became the youngest at 17 to play an official match for Argentina when he featured in their World Cup qualifier against Chile in early June of this year. And moving on to tennis, defending champion Jannik Sinner dispatched a Canadian 23rd seed Felix Auger-Aliassime in straight sets to advance to the Cincinnati semi-finals on Thursday. The Italian world number 1 claimed a dominant 6-love 6-2 win and will next face either 7th seed Holger Rune of Denmark or French qualifier Terence Atmani for a place in the final. The defending champion prevailed in a brief 71 minutes as he claimed an 8th victory in a row at this event and his 30th this season. Sinner, playing his first tournament since his Wimbledon triumph, will face either French qualifier Terence Atmani or Danish 7th seed Holger Rune for a place in the final. Auger-Aliassime meekly lost the opening set after less than 30 minutes, delivering 3 double faults in the final game. After dropping his early serve in the second, Sinner broke back to level at 2-all, eventually advancing as Auger-Aliassime coughed up his 8th double fault on match point. Sinner extended his winning streak on hard courts to 25 matches, joining Roger Federer, Novak Djokovic, Rafael Nadal and Andy Murray as just the 5th man this century to reach the milestone on the surface. And in women's action, French Open champion Coco Gauff beat Lucia Bronzetti 6-2, 6-4 to reach the quarterfinals. The second-seeded Americans' game showed minor rust after a bye in the previous round. Gauff, who was broken once in each set herself, finally secured a spot in the last 8 with the concluding break of the 61st ranked Italian's serve as Bronzetti hit long after 79 minutes on court. Gauff next takes on 7th seed Jasmine Paolini, who crushed 2024 Wimbledon champion Barbora Krejcikova 6-1, 6-2. And that's it for today. In our top story, Trump says journalists should be allowed into Gaza. Do join us again tonight at 8:30 p.m. on TV1 and Saluran Berita RTM for more news. Alternatively, you can stream us live on RTM Click's website and mobile app. I'm Mohana Priya, Malaysia Madani, Rakyat, Disantuni. Thank you for your company.